Okay, now it should be working. Yes, it is. Alrighty then. Hey, you, and welcome. My name is Mike, folks, and you're listening to the latest and quite possibly the greatest ever episode of the That Chapter podcast. So, saddle yourselves in for quite a ride. We've got guests. Jim Carrey is going to make an appearance. But best of all,
do not go in there.
See, I told you he'd be here. But best of all, I'm sitting beside Dirty Keith, junior associate
to the stars.
To the stars.
To the star.
Keith's back again, folks.
Hey, I never left.
Not that he actually ever went. There was like one episode, I think, a couple of weeks ago where you weren't on it, and then every other episode, you've literally been on every other episode, I think. So
I'm just always here. I'm like a bad smell.
Yeah, remember the first few episodes, like you were on, and it was like, oh, featuring Keith in this episode, and then I just was like, I'm not even gonna bother putting the featuring on because you just like you kind of like latched your claws on there.
I did, yeah. I'm not leaving, man.
Yeah, I know.
It's
leaving. Hard, bad smell. Her don't
I'm
push. You might say. All right, well, that's fine. Anyway, folks, today, any ghost stories, Keith?
No ghost stories. It's quiet. We have put up our Halloween decorations, though, which is
folks,
fun.
It's mid-October. Spooktober.
And yeah, it was a good fun putting up the Halloween decorations. My daughter is, she got very attached to the skeleton that was up in our attic. We have like a skeleton, which is like the size of her. And when it came down, she's like, oh, I've missed you so much. And she was just bringing it everywhere with her, which is, it's pretty funny, but a bit creepy, but I like it.
A little bit creepy, but why not? Better than anything else. Speaking of horror, horror that is your daughter, I've also been getting into some horror movies of lately because I've been kind of, Hollywood horror has been kind of lacking.
Yeah, I've been lacking, yeah.
So what movies did I watch? I watched a new VHS.
Oh, yeah.
VHS Halloween.
Yeah.
Man, the VHS series is fantastically getting shitter. It's actually incredible how bad the quality's gone since the first two.
It's kind of like that series, Hell House. That first Hell House was Hell House LLC or something. I thought it was really good. The first one
is great.
First one was
after the quality swiftly goes downhill. After
the second one was okay, and then from the third, it was like dog shit.
Oh, I think I watched like 5 minutes. I was like, nope. But VHS Halloween, I actually thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it more than last year's VHS Beyond. It was fun. It was definitely didn't take itself seriously at all. I mean, some of the short stories were, the bits, the things. Like the acting was bad, the writing was bad, but it's like kind of intentionally bad.
Yeah.
There was one I didn't like, which is about kids getting guilt, which I just didn't fuck with that one.
That's fun for nobody.
Yeah, it wasn't fun for me. But all the other ones I thought were great. Just really fun, just dumb as fuck. But so that was that. And then I also watched another movie, a classic, which I'd never seen before, called In the Mouth of Madness.
Okay.
A John Carpenter prod. It's very good. I'd never seen it. John Carpenter, I've praised The Thing as one of the greatest horror movies. I've also shat on Halloween, which is his other pretty most famous horror movie. And the Mouth of Madness was pretty good.
Nice,
it's very Lovecraftian, and I'm a big H.P. Lovecraft fan. About this writer who goes, searching for a missing author in like somewhere in New England or whatever, and then the writer's stuff starts to become real, and it's all like cosmic horrors from like very Lovecraftian. It was fun. Yeah, Sam Neill is great in it.
Oh, he's great.
Sam Neill's great at everything. Yeah,
it's true.
It's good. It's not nearly as good as The Thing, which is still his best movie. But I thought it was very fun. So that's the two movies. I'm trying to think if I watched anything else. Man, I'm right. My brain has not been working lately. I do feel like I'm getting stupider as I get older.
I know, me do, yeah.
But that's all I can think of right now.
I feel like I've never recovered from like 2020. It's just been like a gradual decline since then.
Oh, yeah. I was peaking before COVID hit, and then swiftly cut down from my prime.
Yeah.
But you know what? Here we're not taught here to talk about Mike's movie reviews, like her Mike's movie reviews. I can't even talk.
Or her descent into madness.
Yeah. Talk about In the Mouth of Madness over here. Today we're here to talk about something else, aren't we, Keith? We're talking about the Chicago Street Rebels.
This case is so disturbing. Like the level of sadistic violence here it's some of the worst that I've ever read.
Very true.
I feel like and also like the sheer number of victims as well is wild. Like we're talking about it's in the double digits, all within like barely a year and a half. It really reminds me of Barbadella, the case we did.
Right. Yeah, I definitely get that. Very just gruesome and twisted, dark. Probably a bit of a trigger warning for this just for how dark it is. Like, they were doing shit to the victims I'd never heard of. We spoke about this a couple of days ago.
We did, yeah.
Just how fucked up it was. I definitely never heard of some of the really sick, twisted tortures they did to
There's
some people.
Stuff there that I can't unread.
Yeah.
It's dark. But it's weird because it's one of those cases, kind of like Bob Berdilla as well. It kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit.
Right.
Like, I feel like one of the reasons might have been like a timing thing. Like, I know these murders, they kind of happened around the same time as the Chicago Tylenol murders.
Right. Yeah.
There's like people was like dropping dead all around because after taking these Tylenol capsules, which were laced with potassium cyanide, there was like at least 7 victims.
And they never found out who did it.
Never found out who did it, No one was charged or convicted as of 2025.
Yeah, hence, and that's led to those anti-tamper things on medicine bottles today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked about that before. The case of Stella Nickel, I covered that in a video a while back. She was inspired by the Tylenol murders, so she killed her husband using the same trick, with putting like cyanide in his Tylenol, but she also then did it with public ones.
Okay.
And another person also randomly died.
Right.
But she was trying to make it seem like it was random, like her husband and another person were randomly.
Okay,
so she essentially poisoned the entire town's Tylenol supply.
Yeah.
And she was eventually she was inspired by the Chicago Tylenol murders.
Yeah, there's a lot of copycats after that, I think. But I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why this case in particular, like between that and then just the horrific graphic nature of the crimes.
Right, it's almost like people didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I was surprised I'd never heard of this case either.
As I said, I think there is 100% a trigger warning for this one. Because,
it gets dork. Alrighty then, folks. Let's get into it. As you probably guessed from the title, we're visiting the Windy City today. Back in 1980, Chicago, Illinois had a population a smidge over 3 million permanent residents, which is actually almost 500,000 more than today. The violent crime rate, including homicide, though still high, had actually fallen a little. But little did authorities know that 4 men were about to do their very best to reverse that drop in murders. And we will begin with the ringleader, Robert Gecht. Robert Gecht was born in Menard, Illinois, on November 30th, 1953. Though by most accounts he was a normal kid growing up, Gecht was eventually sent to live with his grandparents following accusations that he had interfered with his sister. You gotta love the words people did, use back in the old days.
Yeah. He's a bit of a character,
Yeah, he's just a bit odd, He's fine though. Yeah, just a bit of a character. Now, whether this is true or not hasn't been proven, and Robin has always strongly refuted the claims of molesting his sister, basically. But who knows? Given what he goes on to do, it wouldn't surprise me if he did. Regardless of the horrific allegations against him, Robert Gecht would still go on to get married and have 3 children.
So he managed to find a reasonably well-paying employment at PDM Contractors, which happened to be owned by none other than Mr. John Wayne Gacy.
That's me doing a spit take.
Right.
It's crazy. Yeah, he literally worked with
John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah. One of the same serial killers of all time.
It was crazy. Yeah. Other than that little factoid, shockingly little is actually known about his or the other Chicago Rippers prior to their spath of murders from May 81 all the way to November 82. So as I said at the beginning, not really a long time period.
Yeah. We're almost sort of going to go straight into the murders. But let's get into the characters first. Sometime at the end of the 70s or the very early 1980s, just as the Satanic Panic movement got into its full flow, Gecht caught wind of the growing terror, and it ended up sparking an intense interest in Gecht that had been first sparked during his childhood after he read the Satanic Bible. This time, the fascination grew to a point that Gecht decided he was sick of watching from the sidelines and wanted to play a much more active role. Not from the conservative side, though, not at all. Gecht was much more intrigued by the idea of Satanism and the moral freedom it seemed to offer. Because basically he was like, I just want to do whatever the fuck I want to do to whoever I can get my hands on.
Whenever I please.
Yeah, I don't even think it had anything to do with Satanism. He just didn't give a shit about anything and just wanted this as some sort of excuse.
He was just putting a name for his shitty, horrible behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Next, we have Edward Spreitzer. Edward Spreitzer's mother, Judith, was only 16 when she gave birth to him. Though she divorced Spreitzer's father when her son was 7, she later testified that Spreitzer's father had treated him very poorly as a child because he was, quote, slow. He'll later be found to have an IQ of around 76, which is considered borderline defective. Not that I put much stock in IQ tests, but it does seem to be a bit of a theme among the Chicago Street Rippers other than their leader, Robin Gecht. It seems like a case of following the leader, like Edward Spreitzer was younger than Robin Gecht and looked up to him. Now, Edward Spritzer, he had a tough start, and it only got worse after his mother remarried, and he instantly and constantly clashed with his new stepfather. To make things worse, Spritzer was also isolated among his peers at school thanks to low IQ and obvious lack of social skills. Spritzer's home life continued to deteriorate, but he stuck it out until he was 18 when he left home to try and make it on his own. Unfortunately, that led Edward Spritzer right into the path of Robin Gecht, who offered the prospect of not only a place to stay, but seemingly genuine friendship too. Edward Spritzer was putty in Robin Gecht's hands. And next, we have the Kokorailis brothers, Thomas and Andrew, who both were considerably younger than Robin Gecht and a little younger than Edward Spritzer when the cruise spree began, at 19 and 20 years old. The brother met Robin Gecht when they worked on his construction team, Gacy Inc., and he would later introduce them to Edward Spritzer, completing the lineup of what the press would dub the Chicago Ripper crew.
Now, when it came to accomplices, Gecht, he certainly had a type. Like Edward Spritzer, the Kokorailis brothers, they had, shall we say, a limited intellect. Like, I feel if you gave them a penny for their thoughts, you'd get change. But the brothers, again, like Edward Spritzer, they were vulnerable. They were young and easily manipulated. And in some aspects, they began very much as victims of Robin Gecht. But then they would go on to kill and terrorize people.
Yeah, just usual sort of bullied people become bullies, and I don't know.
Pretty much, yeah. But like they had their lives destroyed by Robin Gecht, and like had they had the proper guidance and safeguards, like both their lives, they may have gone in a different direction. But who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. But unfortunately, we never will, because they did some very sick shit.
They did, yeah.
So it wasn't hard for Robin Gecht's interest in Satanism and the occult to rub off on the Kokorailis brothers and Spritzer. Ultimately, they were just so grateful to him that they likely would have followed him, into whatever he led them to. Like Robin Gecht, you can't understate the control he had over these three other men. Like it always so insidiously does, it began small and grew from there. Before long, in early 1981, Gecht would host regular meetings of his little club at his house after his wife had left for work. The four of them even set up a place for the group to perform various rituals and rites, which are totally made up by Robin Gecht, complete with their very own altar in Gecht's attic space that the group referred to as their, quote, satanic chapel.
That's cool.
That is cool. Yeah, can I go to it?
Yeah. Like if you're just doing that and having a couple of beers and shooting the shit, that's cool. That's cool.
I'm gonna just call my man cave the satanic chapel. Yeah. So early on in the group's meetings, Gecht began introducing the idea of, quote, and here we go, sacrifices.
That's not cool.
Even when Robin told his three impressionable followers that they'd be going out around Chicago to find those sacrifices, none questioned him. They were like, sacrifices? Cool.
I'm on board.
Yeah.
Like, the Kokorailis brothers, I feel they genuinely believed that Gecht was in touch with the devil and might actually have had some kind of mystical powers, including, like, having the ability to control people's thoughts and actions. And now, like, I guess, like, fear and stupidity are powerful factors, but it kind of just goes to show what kind of character the Gecht was. He was kind of like a cult leader. Yeah,
for sure. Definitely a wannabe cult leader and sort of a real one for the Chicago Ripper crew. On the morning of May 15th, 1982, 21-year-old Lorraine Barowski, known to her friends as Lori, was kidnapped as she opened up Remax Realtors, the realtor's office where she worked as a secretary, on St. Charles Road and Route 83, Elmhurst, Illinois. Lorraine's employer, Don Stibe, arrived at the office sometime between 8:45 and 9 a.m., and Don immediately noticed the small collections of items on the ground right outside the office door. Already puzzled as to why on earth his employees' shoes and other personal belongings would have left outside like that, Stibe went inside, and when he found that Lori wasn't there, his worry and confusion turned into panic and terror. Naturally, he called the police, who sent officers to the scene. The responding officers and investigators knew from the very beginning that Barowski's disappearance was suspicious and involved foul play, thanks to those, loose several items being left at the scene, not least of which being the high heels she'd been wearing when she was taken.
They also found at the scene several cosmetic items belonging to Barowski, along with keys that she had been using to open up the store. Now, curiously, detectives also noted that there was a nut driver, which is basically, it's a screwdriver, but just with nuts. And they discovered that at the scene, something that Lorraine May Barowski, the victim's mother, confirmed that it was not her daughter's. A man named Frederick Moberly, who owned a store in the plaza opposite from where Lori worked and was taken, told the police that he had seen a, quote, reddish-orange van parked in a nearby lot that morning. The van had stood out to him because the lot was usually empty around that time.
However, Moberly hadn't noticed the shoes and other items that would have been around 50 feet away from him, so he didn't think it was suspicious enough to warrant calling the police at that time. Despite police looking out for any similar vans owned by known criminals, in particular violent sexual offenders, there was simply not enough to go on. And despite several news stories carrying the case of Lorraine Barowski's disappearance, the leads quickly dried up.
There was also a detective that they brought in, and he was a certified hypnotist.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. So he hypnotized the liquor store owner to see if the man could, subconsciously remember any little details there in the back of his head. So the man told him that there was an older model Thunderbird or Cougar, which they should be looking for. Now, this detail was incredibly wrong. So, I'm glad he didn't listen to that guy, because I don't know where he got his qualifications from.
Yeah, I gotta love the old hypnotism where they just invent shit straight out of their ass. It's great. On October 6th, 1982, about 6 months later, the gang would claim their only male victims in a spontaneous and completely random drive-by shooting. The victims were a 28-year-old known drug dealer named Rafael Tirado and his friend 18-year-old Alberto Rosario. The pair were standing in a phone booth on the corner of Damon and Lemoyne in the heart of Chicago when Gecht saw them, and he told Spritzer to slow down and then to stop. Gecht pulled out 2 guns, a .38 caliber pistol and a rifle from the back of the car and opened fire on the unsuspecting men, both of whom were hit multiple times. Rosario actually survived the shooting, but Tirado, hit once in the head and once in the neck, would succumb to his wounds at the hospital. Later on that very same day, October 6, 1982, Gecht lured sex worker Beverly Washington into his car. Washington miraculously survived the following attack, but was found by a railroad track in a seriously bad state. Washington had her left breast completely amputated, and her right breast had been slashed to the point of mutilation. Washington managed to recover and was even able to give the police a thorough description of not only Gecht, but the crime scene, his van, as well. On October 10th, the skeletal remains of Lorraine Barowski, who had been missing now for 6 months after being taken outside a realtor's office, it was finally found in an unused cemetery in Darien, Illinois, roughly 125 yards from a gravel road. Her purse was found around 30 feet away from her remains, and she was initially identified by a neighbor who had seen her leave for work on the morning of her disappearance and was able to recognize the blouse and slacks Lori had been wearing at the time. The officers on the scene noted that her blouse appeared to have been lifted and the bra lowered to expose her breasts. The final identification had to be done by a coroner using x-rays and dental records. The medical examiner who conducted the post-mortem exam, Frank Orlowski, professor of physical anthropology at Northern Illinois University, later testified that in his examination he found that though the right nipple and navel were present, the left nipple was not, leading him to believe it was removed pre-mortem. But he couldn't rule out other explanations including post-mortem animal activity or decomposition.
Also, in addition to a broken nose, Professor Orlowski, he also found trauma wounds to the victim's chest consistent with the victim having been stabbed with something thin and sharp, kind of like some sort of ice pick.
Yeah.
He also noted that there were 2 more wounds to the victim's spine, but he cannot say for certain whether these were caused by the same action or if they were caused independently. There were another 3 stab wounds to the victim's back, again consistent with a tin knife or an ice pick. But Lorraine's parents, they were called to identify the body, and they could only recognize the daughter by her jewelry in the end.
Yeah, it was pretty horrific. Folks, we're getting into it. This is the tip of the iceberg. We're sort of starting at the end with the downfall of the gang because they had committed a lot more murders, which we're gonna get into. And now a quick word from today's sponsor, folks. It is autumn in 2025, and who knows what's up with the economy these days, but I'll tell you this, things ain't getting cheaper, that's for sure. I mean, ever feel like your money just disappears each month? It's easier than ever to overspend, I think we all know this, from subscriptions piling up to impulse buys after seeing an ad on your phone to ordering takeout a few times a month. And you're thinking, sure, what's the harm? But if you're not keeping track, it adds up to a hell of a lot. Rocket Money helps you rein it in by showing you where your money is going and helping you make better decisions so you can keep more money right there in your pocket. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and it helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money shows all your expenses in one place, including subscriptions you forgot about. If you see a subscription you no longer want, Rocket Money will help you cancel it with just a few taps. Their dashboard lays out your total financial picture, including bill due dates and paydays, in a way that's easy to digest. You can even automatically create custom budgets based on your past spending. Rocket Money will even try to negotiate lower bills for you. The app automatically scans your bills, right, to find opportunities to save, and then goes to work to get you better deals. They'll even talk to customer service so you don't have to. Rocket Money has saved users over 2.5 billion with a B, including over 880 million in cancelled subscriptions alone. Their 10 million members save up to $740 a year when they use all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/thatchapterpod today. That's rocketmoney.com/thatchapterpod. rocketmoney.com/thatchapterpod. Thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring the That Chapter podcast. Now let's get back to it. On October 20th, 1982, Chicago police officer Thomas Flynn pulled over Edward Spritzer as he drove Robin Gecht's red Dodge van that resembled a description given to them by surviving victim Beverly Washington. Spritzer told the officer that the vehicle belonged to his employer. During a subsequent search of the vehicle, officers found 3 separate knives in the back. But the most interesting thing that jumped out to detectives was actually something that wasn't there. The handle to open the back door of the van was missing, and so opening the door would have required the use of a tool.
Something like a nut driver, perhaps? Just like the one that happened to have been left at the scene of the crime of Lorraine Barowski's abduction.
The berries. How were they opening the door for like 6 months?
Right, yeah.
That's crazy.
Get it fixed.
Store owner Frederick Moberly, remember, who had seen a suspicious reddish-orange van parked in a lot near to where Lori Barowski was snatched, he was shown a photograph of Gecht's red Dodge van and was able to confirm it was very similar to the one he had seen in the usually empty lot that morning. Spritzer took Detective Flynn to Gecht, who produced the registration papers for the van, and the two of them were detained and taken to Area 5 Police Headquarters. But both Gecht and Spritzer were then later released, pending further investigation. They were now on borrowed time. The police were nailing them for the Lori Barowski abduction and murder. In a voluntary interview on November 5th, 82, with Detective Flynn, Edward Spritzer finally cracked and confessed to being involved in the murder. But it was the murder of a woman named Linda Faye Sutton and the assault on Beverly Washington. Later that same evening, he would go on to admit several more murders and assaults. As you said, they were nailing them for the Lori Barowski abduction and murder, and then they were like, I got something to tell you.
Like, they had no idea about the other ones.
Yeah.
Like, zero idea. And he just went in to sing like a canary. I think it was just like more than happy. It was weird. I'm not sure if he was just happy to get it off his chest.
Yeah.
It's like, finally, a bit of weight off.
Well, he was known to be like have a very low IQ, so
yeah, he was like, just give him what he wants. And
they gave him a crayon coloring book, and he was like, all right, happy to tell you.
Yeah.
So according to his first confession, and this is what he told the police, not the truth, by the way, this is Edward Spritzer's story, which he says, and it doesn't make him look any better, so I don't even know why he told the story. On May 23rd, 1981, which is a full year before Lori Barowski was kidnapped, Edward Spritzer, who was around 21 years old at the time, he was living at the Brer Rabbit Motel, and he was working at Winchell's Donut Shop. This area was far from the best, so Edward Spritzer said that at the time he'd been having car trouble and he didn't fancy the walk home. So he arranged to get a ride home with his manager at the donut shop. Only by the time Spritzer had finished work, the ride didn't show. That was when Spritzer noticed 28-year-old Robin Gecht nearby, who he sorta kinda recognized from Gecht's midnight visits to the shop. And he was like, oh, you?
Yeah.
I'm not your best friend, wink wink. Spritzer asked Gecht for a ride in his red 1975 Dodge van, to which Gecht readily agreed. The men rode around chatting for a while, and they must have gone on pretty well, because when Gecht suggested that they, quote, pick up some whores, Spritzer was all about it. Gecht had Spritzer wait in the back of the van until he found a woman he wanted, and when Gecht banged twice on the van, he was to get out, and as Gecht put it, quote, help him take care of the whore.
Yeah, like the beginning of that story doesn't make any sense. There's just no scenario where he needs a lift, he sees a customer, it's like, oh, there's a familiar face, I think I'll ask him for a lift. And then as soon as we're in the van, he's like, hey, do you want to go around and find some sex workers? He's like, yeah, as if like, let's go for a pint, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
You'll also notice as well, the story that he said, it neglected to mention any of the devil worship or satanic ritual business, nor did he tell the truth about the Cocorellis brothers and their involvement, at least not yet, anyway. I guess he was saving these juicy details for a little bit later.
Yeah, exactly.
He already had your attention while he was saying that.
Yeah, maybe he's just pulling shit out of his ass. Spritzer went on to say that somewhere around the corners of Broadway and Addison Street, Chicago, Gecht had spotted 31-year-old sex worker Linda Faye Sutton from Jonesboro, Arkansas. Gecht persuaded Sutton to get into the van with the offer of several pills and a promise of further payment. Once on board, Gecht, with Spritzer still lurking in the back of the van, they drove around for about half an hour until they stopped, got out, and he tapped on the van for the others to join him by the driver's side door, which Spritzer did. According to Spritzer, he met Gecht at the driver's side and saw Linda Sutton sitting in the passenger seat. Gecht had a pair of handcuffs and a knife. Gecht walked around and dragged Linda Sutton from the van and over into some bushes nearby. After around 5 minutes or so, Spritzer could hear Sutton asking Robin Gecht what he was doing and why was he doing it to her. Gecht signaled Spritzer over to him with a whistle. When Spritzer got over to Gecht and Linda Sutton, he saw that Gecht was still in the process of having intercourse with Linda Sutton, though not as you would expect. And this is the trigger warning bit, folks, I think is the best way to put it. Gecht had severed one of Linda Sutton's breasts with a knife and was having intercourse with the wound. Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. This is as dark as, yeah.
Yeah, man. It doesn't get darker than that.
Wow. Spritzer could see the amputated breast on the ground nearby on the grass. Gecht then sent Spritzer back to the van to fetch some wire. After he did so, Gecht ordered Spritzer to take the wire and use it to sever Linda Sutton's remaining breast. Spritzer then proceeded to have intercourse with the fresh wound, just like he'd seen Robin Gecht just do.
Yeah.
Gecht retrieved the wire along with Linda Sutton's severed breast, and the two men left Linda Sutton for dead. Her hands still cuffed behind her. She was still alive as they drove off.
And that's the most shocking part of it.
Yeah.
That she was still alive throughout this whole thing.
Linda Sutton, a mother of two, lived with her own mother on Chicago's west side and had no reason to vanish. So when she did so, there was strong reason to suspect something was amiss right from the get-go. Linda Sutton's partially decomposed body was found several days after she had been taken. Her body was found on June 1st, 1981, in a field behind the Moonlit Hotel in Chicago's Villa Park. The location was a short distance east of the Brer Rabbit Motel on North Avenue, where Edward Spritzer was living at the time. Police had been responding to a call from the public reporting a foul smell that they believed to be possibly a dead deer. They'd end up making a much more horrific discovery than that. Linda Sutton's hands were still handcuffed behind her back, her slacks and underwear had been pulled down, and her blouse and bra lifted up. Linda was not readily recognizable and was only identified post-mortem through her dental records. The coroner ruled her cause of death was most likely the several stab wounds to her chest, and an autopsy performed later that same day.
The coroner, he did note that the victim's breasts, they were missing, and several of the ribs were badly damaged, though at the time he wrote that the breasts being absent was most likely due to composition. It was only after being asked to consider the possibility of pre-mortem amputation, it was only then that he realised that the cuts were symmetrical and it ended abruptly, something that would not occur naturally in nature. The subsequent homicide investigation had very little to go on, and it wasn't long at all before the trail went completely dead and the case landed on a big old cold pile. Now, little did anyone know at the time, but Linda Sutton was the first victim of the Chicago Ripper crew.
First known victim of the Chicago Ripper crew in May of 81. And so when Spritzer was telling this story to the detectives, well, they knew they were going to nail him for Lorraine Barowski's abduction and murder. That happened in 82.
Yes.
So 1 whole year later after the murder of Linda Sutton. So the police were like, oh, weren't expecting anything. They were like, oh, it's going to be a quiet year. No. It turned out there was quite a few more victims between Linda Sutton and Lorraine Barowski. The second murder he was involved with wasn't Lorraine Barowski, as the police were expecting, as I said, but an unidentified female hitchhiker. Spritzer recalled the second killing taking place around a month after Linda Sutton's murder. It took place on July 1st of 81. Spritzer and Gecht were once again driving along Route 83 in Gecht's van when they spotted a black female hitchhiker. The men picked her up, Gecht offered her pills, which she took and afterwards became, quote, spacey. The men took her to a cemetery, dragged the drugged woman out of their van, and Gecht hit her twice with a baseball bat. Around 5 minutes later, Gecht returned to the vehicle where Spritzer was waiting, with the woman's severed breasts in his hand. The detectives were unable to identify that victim.
The third victim was also not Lorraine Barowski. According to Spritzer, she was the fourth victim. So number 3 was actually another lone black female hitchhiker that he and Gecht had picked up on the way back from work. So Gecht ordered him into the back of the van while he drove around to a secluded forest area. When Gecht tapped on the van, once again, Spritzer got out, taking the handcuffs and a knife with him. The first of which he handed over to Gecht, who then cuffed the woman. Spritzer waited in the van for 5 minutes until Gecht returned with one of the women's breasts in his hand. To this day, neither of these two women have been identified.
Yeah, exactly. Their first victim, Linda Sutton. Their fourth victim, Lorraine Barowski. Victim number 2 and 3.
No idea.
No idea who those two poor women are. The next would be Lorraine Barowski. Spritzer claimed to have little to offer detectives, though, as he and Gecht had been looking for a girl. But when they failed to find a suitable victim, they parked in a lot to eat and drink beer. Spritzer had fallen asleep in the back, and when he woke up, the van was parked in a cemetery in Clarendon Hills. He got out of the van, saw Gecht, quote, stabbing a white woman near a tombstone. Gecht then ordered him back into the van, which he did. Spritzer then claimed Gecht returned to the van 5 minutes later. Once again, he had the knife in one hand, a woman's breast in the other hand. Which is very convenient for Spritzer that the one murder they were nailing him on, he's like, oh, I don't remember that one.
I wasn't even there.
Drunk, yeah. On November 7th, 1982, Edward Spritzer took detectives to where the Cocorales brothers lived, and they too were arrested, albeit 5 days apart. Andrew on the 7th, Thomas on the 12th. Over the next 2 days, in an interview with Chicago police detective Thomas Flynn, like Spritzer had done a couple of days earlier, Andrew Cocorales would confess to not only the murder of Lorraine Barowski, but about half a dozen more. The first murder he described was that of a black woman, fitting the description of Linda Sutton. Spritzer, I thought it was only you and Gecht in his version of the stories, and now, oh yeah, I was actually there too.
Yeah, right.
It's so dumb. But the thing was, like, there's so many of these murders, there were cold cases and they never would have been connected unless they told the story.
Yeah.
But then when they told the story, they lied about the story.
Yeah. I still find it a bit mad that they were never able to connect these before as well. Like, there was women showing up with amputated breasts.
Yeah. It was crazy.
How did they not connect it?
Yeah. According to Andrew Cocorales, he, Gecht, and Spritzer had been driving when they saw the woman. They grabbed her, took her to a field near the Brer Rabbit Hotel, which matched Spritzer's story, only in Spritzer's story, Andrew wasn't there. 2 days after his arrest, DuPage County Sheriff's Office sent detectives Warren Wilkos and John Sam to interview Andrew Cocorales. Knowing that they needed to solidify his confession, Detective Sam showed Andrew Cocorales 3 photos of Lorraine Barowski and asked him if he recognized the woman in the images. Without any prompting, Andrew Cocorales pointed to the woman, he pointed to Lori, basically, immediately, and told the detectives, that's the girl Eddie Spritzer and I killed in the cemetery. And now he's telling a different story. Where Spritzer said he was drunk and Gecht did it, and now he's saying, Andrew's saying him and Spritzer did it. It's like so all over the place. They can't even get their lies straight. They're all like confessing to murders that they're saying the other one did it, but I did it. It's like weird.
I feel like they were all there. They were all like drunk or on something. So like even like recalling it, it was like, oh, I can't remember. Which is wild because like this is such like, how do you not remember killing someone? It's crazy. How is it not like seared in your memory?
Yeah, it's so horrifying.
But Andrew Cocorales, he also went on to say that sometime in the spring of 82, he and Spritzer had been driving on Route 83 in Gecht's van and had pulled into a parking lot. That's when they saw Lorraine Barowski and decided to grab her. They pulled up nearby, dragged her into the van before taking her to the cemetery where they assaulted and killed her. So that was his version.
Yeah. In a second statement on November 8, 1982, Edward Spritzer gave a revised version of events surrounding the murder of Linda Sutton. In this new account, Andrew Cocorales had also been present and participated in the kidnapping and killing. Spritzer claimed that after Sutton had refused to stop screaming in the van, Andrew Cocorales punched her several times in the face, causing her to fall into the back of the van. The 3 men had then taken Linda Sutton back to Spritzer's bedroom at the Brer Rabbit Hotel, where Cocorales stuck a Coke bottle into her privates several times. The men then took her to the field by the hotel where they assaulted and killed her in line with Spritzer's initial confession. This statement also implicated Cocorales and eventually his brother in several more of the murders, including placing him as the triggerman in the drive-by shooting of those 2 men. Spritzer he would later recant that whole thing on November 8, but would confirm that his original confession was the accurate one. It's so stupid.
Yeah, I know.
That doesn't even make sense. However, detectives believed that at least one of the Cocorales brothers had been present and involved in the murder, so at least some of the second statement was true, the murder of Linda Sutton, and I'd say all of it was true. Authorities would later uncover evidence that their suspicions were correct, and that both Andrew and Thomas had been present at Laurie's abduction and murder. Perhaps the most complicated aspect of the case is the varying level of truth in the stories of the 4 members of the crew. Despite 3 of them pleading guilty, their stories all featured different details, including locations, times, and who was present at each of the murder. And that's why this story is it's such a mystery.
Yeah.
Because the police were not going to solve these murders. They were just unsolved cold cases of bodies found.
Yeah.
Then you have the people admitting to the murders, but they're all telling different stories about how the murders occurred. They're all admitting to doing them, but
completely different versions.
Completely different versions of it's if you're confessing, why not just tell the truth? I really just don't get the story of the Chicago Ripper crew.
It's all over the place. Yeah, it's wild. Many of the most grisly aspects of the killings, they changed with the teller too. In some versions, Andrew and Edward would admit to having cannibalized the breasts which they had taken from their victims as part of a sacrament. They also claimed to have performed various occult rituals with the stolen flesh, rituals which they said they truly believed in. On another occasion, the Cocorales brother Andrew would claim to have seen Gecht with as many as 15 breasts in a box.
Jesus.
I know, yeah. He also claimed that he'd seen Gecht take the breasts out and, there's no nice way to say it, he masturbated with them.
15 severed breasts in a box. Just walking around with? That's a lot of breasts.
That's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So the same day of Spreitzer's first confession, Robin Gecht was rearrested and given a $1 million bond after investigators found that Gecht had rented a motel room along with the Cocorales brothers and Edward Spreitzer. The owner of the motel told them that the men would hold loud parties, and he believed they were involved in, quote, some kind of cult. Between Spreitzer and Andrew Cocorales, the men would admit to as many as 17 murders, though police suspected that the number could be even higher. Unfortunately, the body count was only ever going to rise. According to both Spreitzer and the Cocorales brothers, on May 29th, 1982, the gang abducted 30-year-old Shui Mak, who'd only recently immigrated to the States from China. Mak had been walking through Hanover Park in Illinois around 1 a.m., having been just dropped off by her brother when she was taken. The body of Shui Mak, who the gang had killed, wouldn't be discovered until September 30th, 1982, 5 months after she vanished. 2 weeks after the murder of Shui Mak, the gang abducted Angel York. Rather than murdering the young woman though, this time the gang chose to mutilate her, slicing her breast with a knife before tossing her out of the van. Sadly, she wasn't able to provide any kind of information to the police that they could really work with.
Like, to torture these women, it was absolutely horrific. When they kidnapped Angel York and pulled her into the van, so Robin Gecht, he told her to cut her own breast while he was holding the gun to her head.
Jeez.
She tried to do it, but, there's only so much you can willingly cut yourself.
Yeah.
Gecht, he ended up getting frustrated, and she did a little nick, and he proceeded to rip the wound open wider by hand.
I don't like this.
It was, and again, having intercourse with the wound. And this went on for about an hour. She survived it. She was able to tell the police about it. So we know the men weren't lying. With the victims who had unfortunately died.
Yeah. It's just, they would just lie about who was there at the time.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. On August 27th, 1982, 18-year-old Sandra Delaware's body was discovered under the Fullerton Avenue Bridge, having been dumped into the Chicago River after she disappeared earlier that same day. Both her hands and feet were bound with shoelaces. Her cause of death was strangulation using a ligature that was still wrapped around her neck. She'd also been stabbed in the stomach so deeply that the wound lacerated her liver. On September 8, 1982, the body of 31-year-old marketing executive Rose Marie Beck Davis was discovered. The Cocorales brothers and Spreitzer later admitted to her murder also.
This murder was actually particularly shocking to the public, so not just because of the sheer brutality, but because of where it happened. So she'd been found dumped in an alleyway in a pretty decent part of town, like the kind of place where, people thought that they'd be safe. It just showed that the Ripper crew, they were starting to get a bit bolder. They weren't taking them out in the middle of nowhere. So when she was discovered first, it was actually called in as a possible suicide by jumping because she was in such bad shape. Like, her eye sockets were crushed, her jaw was shattered, and there was deep lacerations across her breast, and there was stab wounds to her stomach that left blood spattered like in a 9-foot radius around the alleyway's brick walls. The county medical examiner, he later found a piece of wood that had been forced inside her so violently that it reached her small intestines.
Oof.
And again, like she would have been alive this entire time.
Horrifying. This is very much like the Bob Bordello. You should have your happy facts in this story, Keith.
Right, yeah. Like, this case is so fucked. And, like, we're only giving, like, the high-level notes of the crimes as well. Like, there's a book about it called Deadly Thrills by J. Slade Fletcher. And there's way more horrific details in there. Yeah. So if you're a bit of a masochist, go read that. But it's horrific.
So without guilty pleas from all four men, trying them together would have been a risky move. There was a whole lot of complicated factors. One of those was the reason authorities hadn't originally connected the obviously connected murders. In addition to the varying socioeconomic status of the victims, from low to relatively high, something that hindered a potential breakthrough or linking the spat murders. Despite several glaring similarities, the women were all different. Like Linda Sutton, she was African American. Lorraine Barowski was Caucasian. Shui Mack was Asian. Serial killers, they rarely do that. They'll usually, white killers kill white women, black killers kill black women, usually. Yeah. Serial killers tend to stick to one racial group. It's highly unusual for a killer, or in this case, a gang of killers, to kill not only outside of their own race, but across several. Little details like these, along with the constantly changing stories as we've gone through from the four alleged rippers, meant that the trial process was going to be a complicated one. Without going into details that would keep us here forever, each member was tried separately and found guilty. The story doesn't end there though. Each of the convicted would then later appeal their sentences several times over. Thomas Kokorelis is the only one of the gang to be a free man, having played the least involvement, or at least involvement that could be proven, and was released from the Illinois River Correctional Center in Canton, aged 58, having served 36 years for his involvement in Lorraine Barowski's death. Murder, kidnapping and murder, torturous murder. Thomas was originally sentenced to life in prison, but was allowed to plead guilty in exchange for a 70-year sentence following a successful appeal and fresh trial. In accordance with Illinois state's sentencing guidelines at the time, custodial sentences must allow for a day-for-day reduction on a prisoner's sentence. Essentially, every day of good behavior in prison is rewarded with an equivalent reduction of their sentence. So, in reality, it means that inmates are only expected to serve half of their sentence, right?
Yeah.
This is also why you'll sometimes see judges hand out like outrageously long sentences. It's because, well, they know that they're only going to probably end up doing half of it. So let's give them 500 years. That kind of shit.
He'll only do 250.
Hell yeah, if you had nothing. So Thomas Kokorelis, his release caused obvious and warranted outrage, especially given that he was initially released into the same community in which he committed his crimes. Thomas's original scheduled parole release was on September 29th, 2017, after serving half of the 70-year sentence, and that was delayed by the state attorney's office, basically suspending the release as they'd been unable to find a suitable location to house him. The crusade against the Kokorelis' release was led by Lorraine's brother, Mark Barowski, with a petition to have Thomas ruled as a sexually violent and dangerous offender and therefore not eligible for parole, and that petition gained thousands of signatures. For Glimmer, it looked like they might win, but Thomas Kokorelis was ultimately released in March 2019. He now lives in Peoria, Illinois.
He's such a piece of shit. There is an interview on YouTube with him after he got released, and there is zero remorse. He still claims that he's innocent in all of this, and he was coerced by giving his confession by the Chicago police. He said he confessed to police because he was on drugs, and the officers, they fed him information about the crimes.
Of course.
Yeah, he's just full of shit. Like, I know there was a lot of coercion, especially in Chicago in the 80s and stuff, but no, these lads were sick.
His brother, Andrew Kokorelis, was executed by lethal injection in the early morning hours of St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 1999. Despite last-ditch attempts to win him a stay of execution. No stay. Kokorelis was originally given a life sentence in 1985 for his role in the Rose Davis murder. Having only narrowly escaped the death sentence for the Davis killing in March 1987, he was then facing the death penalty again for the Lorraine Barowski murder. The second time around, his luck ran out, womp womp, and he was sent to death row. His last words were an apology to Lorraine's family, followed by Old Testament Bible verses. Despite being the only member and leader of the crew to not plead guilty to anything, Robin Gecht received a total of 120 years in prison. Sure, it's only 60 years in prison. None of those years were for murder, by the way. His 1983 trial would end with Gecht being convicted on counts of attempted murder, aggravated kidnapping, deviant sexual assault, and rape for the attack on Beverly, Washington. Arguably, it should have been Gecht and not Andrew Kokorellis that faced the old Pokey Pokey Dead. Lethal injection, that's the one they would have used. And he has spoken out, Robin Gecht has spoken out in interviews from behind bars many times, and even elaborated on his breast fetish, because he was definitely the one leading the charge when it came to cutting off boobs, and he believed the fetish was hereditary. In fact, he believed he had gotten it from his father, and so on and so on. Gecht also admitted that often, during sex with his wife, he would ask her to let him prick pins into her breasts. Amazingly, she said yes, regardless of her own distaste for what amounted to mild torture. He even took things further when he asked her to let the wounds get infected. She agreed to let the wounds in her boobs get infected.
Jesus.
So, yeah. He remains in custody at the Danville Correctional Center, and he won't, his first opportunity for parole won't be until October 2042. 2042, what a time, when he will be 88 years of age, with a projected discharge date of October 2045.
My God, that Gecht is sick in head.
Yeah.
So, sometimes we need to shame kinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Some kink shaming needs to stay.
If you have a problem with that, my kink is kink shaming, so...
Yeah, exactly.
Shame on you.
Yeah. Just turn it around, baby doll. And finally, we have Edward Spreitzer. He too was sentenced to death in 1986 for the murder of Linda Sutton, having already been sentenced to life after pleading guilty in the cases of Shree Mack, Rose Davis, Sandra Delaware, and Rafael Tirado. Unlike Andrew, though, Spreitzer, he got lucky with the timing. Thanks to basically a whole heap of appeals on various grounds, usually like legal technicalities, Spreitzer was able to delay his sentence being carried out long enough that it will likely never happen due to one of the governors of Illinois putting an open-ended memorandum on executions within the state. And then in 2011, legislation was signed abolishing the death penalty in Illinois, replacing it with natural life instead. So Andrew Spreitzer, he got a stay of execution and then basically is still behind bars and will be until the day he dies. But that, my friends, is the story of the Chicago Street Ripper crew.
My God, that is dark.
It's so dark because we truly don't know the story. Like, you're left with so many questions of like the timeline of what happened when. All of it is you're taking their word for what happened. And all of the words conflict with each other. They're all liars. They're all killers. You can't trust any of them.
Like, I think the only truth in it is actually what they did to the women.
Which seems to be the only part they were like, oh, we'll happily tell you the truth about what we did. We just won't say when we did it and who was there. Which is, I don't know. It makes it even more disturbing. It's like they enjoyed telling the horrific part. Yeah, it's a very sick and twisted story.
It's dark, I found some fun, light-hearted facts that you made it this far. If you want something to cheer you up for the end.
I'm in.
So these are based in Chicago, light-hearted facts. Okay. So in Chicago, it's illegal to fish in your pajamas.
Interesting. Yeah. But what if I want to?
I have no idea why.
Get arrested.
Maybe some people sleep nude. So who knows? Maybe it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
You don't be swinging hooks around.
It's cold. It gets cold.
It gets cold.
Yeah.
Also, another one. Here's a weird Chicago law. Dining in a building on fire is illegal. You'd think that'd be common sense.
But
maybe you went for the all-you-can-eat buffet. You're like, I'm not leaving.
I paid my $10. I'm not leaving you.
That's all I got.
And that's better than nothing, Heath. Thank you for trying, at least. Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much for listening to this whole episode of the TCP, the That Chapter podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. This was a grim one.
It was.
So we'll probably do something a bit lighter next week.
Yeah, let's do something fun.
Weird, paranormal, maybe, which is our favorite stories to do. But tune in then, folks. And we'll see you then. Alright, folks. Thanks for listening.
I'll see you.
Alright, bye.